Baby.
Oh, yeah.
Monday.
Back in the saddle.
It feels good to be here, man. It feels really good. I'm all refreshed and everything. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the DNVR show. Guys, I'm so excited for this one. I've had this idea for like a week. Haven't been able to put it in part because somebody got sick on me.
Mm-hmm. Sorry about that.
What the hell, dude? You feeling better?
I am feeling much better. I apologize for deciding to get sick, though.
Do you know what it was?
My energy?
Nope.
What was it?
Well, kind of. It was your mustache.
Does
everybody notice he had the scruff? Everybody, you ever seen something like this? A guy goes with a new style. Everybody goes, vote. I love that style. Immediately changes it. Just to be like, you know what? I don't. Oh, yeah, you did do that with your.
I kind of have the same thing going on. That's all
and last time I saw him, he told me he loved the stash, and now he's got one. I will say.
I forgot. Yeah, by the way, had the greatest mullet of all time.
Actually, that's coming back. It's winter mullet time.
All right, he had the greatest mullet I've ever seen, and then cut it off. I don't know why.
With the stash, you have to push through the initial wave of reviews.
No,
I saw the YouTube comments day one. Did you check them day two? There was a turnaround.
Also, I had to cut off the mullet because I was getting married. I couldn't really get married in the mullet. But it was kind of like the whole condition behind the mullet. You could get it. But
didn't stop Spencer.
Spencer is a different breed, though.
Yeah, he's a different person. Guys, we do have a fun show for you today. First up, I got some news I got an interesting Jokic angle I want to take, because there was something that was brought to my attention over the weekend that just really got me. You ever get something that comes, like a Jokic story that comes up, and it just makes you sit and think about Jokic?
Yeah.
This is one of those ones.
Someone in your life goes, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking about another grown man.
And then in segments 2 and 3, we're going to literally go through every game of the playoffs, every single one, and just kind of talk like in broad strokes about what happened in that game to kind of rank the series, what were the best game in each series. And then at the very end, with all that knowledge under our belt, I'm going to reveal my order of all 20 playoff games this year. This is going to be a great way to remember the entire playoff run. If you're like me, they all run together.
Same.
The further you get, the more they just kind of blend.
Same.
So it was fun to go through this weekend and really watch the highlights of every game, read the stories, just go through and try to remember, okay, this was this game, this was this game. And it's going to be fun, man. It's like we're going to win the championship again today.
Well, that sounds lovely. I have yet to really relive this way. And we were talking before the show. I feel the exact same way as you, especially because it was our first finals coverage as a team. So your mind is in so many places. A, they're going to win the title, so the big picture is hard to ignore. But B, you really want to do a good job in your coverage, and you want to be able to think about all of it to the point where the actual possession by possession of watching the game, it does get a little lost. Right. These are blurred together in my mind, so I'm excited to kind of parse through it all. There
was a lot of games that kind of had the same rhythm. Like when I go watch them, I was like, that's the same game. They just happened in game 1 and game 2. But first, man, big weekend in Denver sports. It was pretty interesting. We're not going to get it too much of it. But big weekend, man.
What a treat. Broad strokes, Saturday night, man, was a big win for the state of Colorado. For that matchup to be in that
He's
time
talking about
slot,
Buffs, Rams, CSU, CU, big in-state college football rivalry.
Thank you. Not everyone has the context. I appreciate that. The Rocky Mountain Showdown, which is a big rivalry locally, regionally. They put it on primetime. They put it after an SEC game. It was the most watched game of the day, and it whipped ass, man. And that's all you can ask for. I mean, if you're a Rams fan, you could probably ask for more.
Yeah, you could ask for a little more.
Or maybe you can't, but you'd like to. But that was a win that matchup looked the way it did in that time slot with all eyes on Colorado, man. So thank you, Dion, for that.
I'm going to ask you a random. I always have random stuff in this Monday. Yeah. Here, what are we doing? Look at the shadows and everything.
We'll do it live to a whole. Yeah, here's changing the lighting,
remaking the set as we do it live. We are a show that needs to look good at all.
Did I look bad?
Oh, he looks so bad. It's the mustache. It just glows off the light too much. Have you? I'm going to ask you this Monday, so we're going to ease into this before we get too far in. But it's Monday. Have you seen the trend that's on social media where women ask their significant others if they think about the Roman Empire?
I have seen that.
Have you seen this?
Yeah. I hate to say it. I do.
I know. This is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
This is what's so crazy about it is I was like sitting there going, because at first you're almost like, I don't think about that. And then you sit there and go like, okay, well, what does it mean to think about a thing?
Yeah.
Like a thought pops into your head. How often?
Not that often.
Just a thought pops in your head. You don't mean you dwell on it, but it's just like a thing where it was like,
constant. But that, here's what my dad had this like a moth to a flame.
Yeah.
Just learning about battles.
Yeah, of course.
Just battles that happened.
Very interesting.
The closer you get to 40, I think, and every year after that, you just lose yourself. I was thinking about what I want some of my old interests to be.
Yeah. What could you pick? I like this.
I'm going to move to the water, not on a boat though, to the water and just chart weather patterns.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Do nothing with that information.
Watching you grow up has been one of the joys.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were such a wee young lad when I first met you.
Wide-eyed, wet behind the
You
ears.
weren't thinking about the Roman Empire at all when I first met you.
Big vegetation. I want to grow some big carrots when I get older.
Quick question. What part of the Roman Empire do you think about? Because I have a specific part that I think about constantly. Like, there's one thing that I actually do think about constantly. Like, so what part do you guys think about the most?
No, you have to go.
Yeah, you started that question.
So me, it's there's two things. How Julius Caesar got stabbed in the back.
Okay.
And how the Roman Empire got taken down because of infiltrating clans.
So you're thinking late Roman Empire then?
The fall of Rome.
Yeah,
I'm
the fall
thinking
of Rome.
the fall of Rome is more interesting because
I mean, of course it is.
Alexander the Great was great for a reason, right? It's like they call Jokic the GOAT for a reason. Like,
okay,
so
all right.
like, you know what I mean? So like, I think about the end. Like, what caused the end more than the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Rome. It was like a place where I was like, I could spend
the empire.
I went to.
Sorry, that was really stupid.
But you go through the ruins and you're just kind of like, I'm telling you, you're kind of like, this was 2,000 years ago.
No, it's
it feels
crazy.
like it should have been like 100 years ago. All of the different things. So I think it is interesting, the war part of it or the battle part of it. I do think it's like wired into men. And then I do think the statesmanship or whatever you want to call it, the idea of like, how did a thriving society span the entire globe?
And then eventually fall, and how
fall.
empires don't disappear, Adam. They sit there like rotting carcasses. You know? They still have a place in the world.
Yeah, I mean Rome's still all right though. Like,
well, the empire, the
but
not the
like
sovereign.
Marcus Aurelius is really interesting. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I just thought we would get this out of the way.
16 minutes into this.
16 minutes in the show. But the thing that I think is really interesting is somebody sent this to me yesterday. Zjelko Obradovic, who I've brought up many times on this show, he is the Phil Jackson of Europe. He's the Phil Jackson of Serbia, but really of all of Europe, the winningest coach in EuroLeague history. He now coaches Partizan. He's taken on PJ Dozier, who was on the show on Friday, by the way. If you missed it, go back. PJ was awesome, man, on the show.
Great.
So he was doing an interview, and somebody asked him about Jokic. And it's in Serbian, so I have to rely on Miroslav. He's translating this for me. And
tough.
Full disclosure, he's a Partizan fan, so he probably like...
And a liar.
So like we have to take this all with a huge grain of salt. But Obradovic was talking about, do you rely on players, like how much the coach-player dynamic? And of course in Europe, you know, it's almost like college basketball where it's like a dictatorship. The coach is the guy that says everything and players just say yes, sir. But he said Jokic called him last year and told him that he watched Obradovic's coaching seminar. Some seminar that is on like DVD or something, or maybe it's online.
Maybe VHS.
Maybe VHS, we don't know.
It's possible.
Jokic watched it and had notes from it that he brought over to the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
And that the Nuggets this last season implemented some of his principles that he took there. But not just that, Vote. He also had notes for Zjelko Obradovic, which means he must be watching his teams play. Partizan, I mean, we know he loves basketball, Partizan and Red Star, you know, the two big teams there. He had notes for them, for which Zjelko Obradovic says he has implemented into their system. And the point of this lecture, or the point of this conversation was that A, Jokic is a basketball savant, as we all know.
No.
But B, that great coaches should be able to learn from their players. They just don't, you know, that there should be some kind of partnership. But do you find this story as interesting as I do?
I do, and there's a third angle to this, and it's so how many jokes have we made about, okay, Jokic has an off night. Is he watching X? Is he watching Y? Is he watching Z? Does he care?
Right.
And I think we've learned over the years that a lot of that stuff, let's call it the general aloofness, I guess,
yes,
is pretty heavily projected or assumed, if not, maybe the best word is exaggerated.
Yep.
Because I think Jokic himself has presented some of it. Sometimes I think that's even strategic.
It is. For sure it is.
And
especially after game 5, they're like, oh, we can go home now. Oh, we have to go to a parade?
Right.
That stuff is so... You can just see it in his eyes.
He knows what... Yeah, and I think he's comfortable being viewed as aloof, but I think of two things. I remember the first wave of this was when we weren't sure how competitive Jokic is because he sees the game almost like a savant to the point where the emotional stakes maybe aren't there. And Vlatko corrected me so quickly in person.
Yeah.
He was like, no, man, he cares so much. That Anthony Davis game in the regular season we always talk about as a watermark in his career. Jokic was so pissed that he wasn't good enough in that game. And so, yeah, he went and he lifted afterwards and he watched film afterwards. And Vlatko says he's more competitive than you think. Anyway, the point being, I think you agree. Jokic loves basketball way more than he's a reluctant hero, a reluctant celebrity. He is not a reluctant basketball player. And I think that's kind of my takeaway.
I'll go further. He loves the game of basketball. The thing about the NBA is it's not just basketball.
Right.
It's all these other things, and I think he truly, genuinely doesn't like all of those other things. And so that aloofness to those things, that is very natural, if not exaggerated, bleeds into the general aloofness about, oh, does this guy even like basketball? It's like this or that. I do think Jokic hates basketball at times. I think, there's probably musicians rock stars that hate music at times and these different things. I think Jokic is probably more honest about those things than most, or at least shares those parts of him. But who watches a basketball seminar?
I know, man.
Who watches that? That takes like true and genuine curiosity to say, hey, this guy who's a great coach in a completely different league, I'm just going to take a look and see what kind of philosophies this guy has, how he teaches the game.
Basketball curiosity, and then also maybe some interesting background information with Jokic dealing with what he is in terms of backlash. Is that not, maybe it's just the love of the game itself, but is there not a little like, hey, let's pass the knowledge around. Let's make sure you got it, I got it.
By the way, a very Serbian trait. I mean, one of the things when I did the documentary, by the way, 100 Invisible Threads, shouts to Miroslav.
Nice plug.
Well, shouts to Miroslav. If it now has Serbian subtitles, the entire thing. So I know a lot of people in Serbia wanted to watch it, but their English maybe not good enough. Tag somebody, put it on Twitter, tag me and tag friends and say, hey, this now has subtitles because I want it to get a second wave in Serbia for people that wanted to see it. But this was a Serbian thing with the founding fathers back in the 50s and 60s, is that at a point in time in the Cold War, when the world was starting to be a little closed off, we don't want to share secrets, the fathers of Yugoslavian basketball said, we need to send our coaches to America. We need to send them to Italy. We need to send them to different places to get training. And we need to take new coaches in. They opened up their world saying they wanted to like share because they had this, we want Yugoslavia or Serbia to be the best. But we also just have this duty to basketball. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at with Jokic, is there's this, it seems to be this appreciation for the game and the growth of the game. He has a quote one time where he talks about something like 20 years from now, they're all going to be way better than me. And I just love it. It's such a like understanding of where you belong in what we hope to be the progress of time.
I absolutely love that. And yeah, I think the idea of Jokic seeing something that is germane to the work of a coach he does not play for. And just thinking, man, like his mind, the basketball world would benefit from this, or maybe even just, our perspective on basketball and our basketball knowledge. It's just awesome. And I think it reveals some of what we've learned from about Jokic over the years, which is just what we were saying, that stuff is easily exaggerated. And the extent to which he cares about the game itself is easily understated.
And here's the last point for me, Vote, because you're right about the passion part. We've checked that box now. We think that this story really demonstrates a part about him. But here's the other thing. Leader Yoke, we always wonder what does that mean, because it's not always in front of us. He's not always doing the thing like this or that. But it has become, over the last couple years, more and more often that Jokic will grab a whiteboard, take over a huddle, do this or that. And I look at this and I go, Jokic is kind of graduating into, when you're first you're a grad student and then you go off and get an entry-level job. If you're like a physicist or something, like you're a grad student, then you're an assistant in some lab, maybe you work for a lab. But when you've gotten all your experience, not just education, but also work experience, oftentimes you'll go into theoretical The theoretical department. Like, I now am going to try to chart new territory. I'm going to try to discover. I kind of wonder if Jokic, with a title under his belt, with 2 MVPs, and by all accounts, mastery of the game of basketball, I wonder if this is the next part up here to where he is now. I'm not going to say on the level of a Zjelko Obradovic, because I think that takes actual experience coaching. But just as a thinker of the game, I wonder if he's like, you know what? My next job, spread this knowledge.
Right. Maybe not coaching, but, almost like universally accessible basketball consultant. But just through, and also, can he innovate? Which he has done already in his like micro movements and just his style. But the coolest thing about Jokic to me is that he came about at a time when we were questioning if basketball was solved.
Right.
And he's such a hard zag to the ways in which we had understood it as solved. And this guy pushed our understanding of the game forward. Can he be a legitimate innovator and not just adding to things, but just, hey man, I don't think anyone has thought of it this way yet. And is there utility in that for the basketball
You
world?
even took it a different direction, because the direction I was thinking was more, we talk about guys like Zeke Naji, Michael Porter Jr., Peyton Watson.
Sure.
Those guys need to get up to speed this year. Michael Porter's already up to speed a lot, but how do you get him to the next zone? Part of me wonders if this is what Jokic needs to do. He calls Zjelko Obradovic and says, hey, you should put in this, this, and this. To me, the best Jokic this year is probably the one that says, all right, Porter, here's how you get to the next level.
Totally
Let
agree.
me just coach you through every step.
Totally agree. And it also, with the background of what we were talking about, the whiteboard stuff, he's pointing to guys, telling them where to be more and more. It does make me wonder to what extent that has already started behind the scenes.
Yep. I think it is. I think it has.
Yes.
But the playoffs, we heard, it was Bruce Brown was on that podcast, and he was like, yeah, man, Jokic just started like in the playoffs, he really stepped up his voice. I hope that becomes the new normal.
Yeah.
And that's just a thing he's comfortable doing the rest of the time.
It's not his job to, and he has said this in the past, but that's not the operative question, right? Like, should you, instead of going like this at Mike, pull him aside? And again, maybe that happens more than we know or think. The frustration is understandable, but I think that's the exciting part about, those are the ways that Jokic gets better, because he can't really materially get much better at basketball. I mean, but he can, the influence he has, helping other teammates get even better, which is arguably his best trait. I think there's actually headroom there. Yeah. So it's exciting.
I just love it. It's like Michael Jordan giving Phil Jackson advice and vice versa.
Right.
Only, Michael Jordan was a great player. I don't know if he was a great thinker of the game. He was obviously very good. He's probably the greatest player ever. But Jokic, that is his genius. And I just love this idea of two geniuses sharing notes out of passion. It's like they speak a language that only a handful of people in the world speak, and they had a conversation, and it just tickles my heart to know it. All right, on the other side, guys, we're going to get to the fun part. We're going to run through all these playoff games and then rank them. Let's relive the best run of our lives collectively on the other side of this break.
Some of the fellas in my life, maybe the ones I'm related to, watched them age, and I'm happy to say a lot of them still have their hair, but there was some thinning going on. Dad, I hate to say it if you're listening, your hair got a little thinner as you got older. It's not your fault. It happens. But I'm looking at ways to stay more voluminous and just generally better looking than you did later into my life. That's why I'm zeroed in on Nutrafol, where I don't have to choose between better hair growth and my health. It provides a whole body approach for men that promotes healthier hair, no drugs, no compromises, just better hair. And yet one of the big barriers between me and taking new products is what is in this stuff. I don't know what anything is anyway. So there's always a bit of fear when you're like, hey, I'm going to add this into my life. But this is why Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, because clinically proved to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage, while you have minimal risk and confusion and doubt about what you're putting into your body. Nutrafol, they're awesome. Check them out. Volo Sports is really cool. I wish I had it when I first moved to a different city where I really struggled to meet people out of college. Man, growing up, Adam, there's all these ways we build community into people's lives. As a kid and in college, it's there for you. You become an adult, you got to go find it. Volo is so cool. The largest social sports company in the US. They have a lot of leagues where adults can play with their friends, come and meet new people, sign up as a free agent. And the whole idea is that we play with Volo so the kids can play for free. There's the Volo Kids Foundation, was a separate 501c that provides free sports camps to kids in each city. Fall leagues are open now. Sign up before it's too late. Get your Volo Pass and start playing in leagues as a free agent today. Make sure to use code DNVR10 for $10 off at www.volosports.com/DNVR.
Alrighty, and we are back. All right, let's get into this vote. I've been going through a lot. I had to take a little time away from the Nuggets after the title run. We know it was long, but over the last month or so, I've been slowly going back and catching some of these, game here, game there, whatever. So I have become more and more familiar with them, but over the weekend, I went through every single one. I just went beat by beat and was like, I'm going to watch the highlight, that 10-minute condensed version, so I can remember every game. I'm going to go through these series by series and give my order of what I think was the best game all the way down to the worst game. So we're going to start with the Timberwolves.
Okay.
This one was tough. I will say this. It was by far the least compelling playoff series, in my opinion. In part because there weren't the big moments. There wasn't a definitive game. There were narrative. You remember Jokic wrist? We were really worried about Jokic's wrist for a while there. So Jokic was he was great, but he wasn't quite as great as he was in rounds 2, 3, and 4. Sure. And it also wasn't needed. Game 1 to me was the number one. And the reason was it was a complete ass whooping. It was a Nuggets blowout from start to finish. They looked great. Their defense was incredible. Their defense in game 1, that's when we kept wondering, can they play playoff level defense? Their defense just swarmed. And I think game 1 might have been the best because they just led wire to wire and dominated.
It provided a layer of safety almost with expectations for the rest of the series. We'll talk about it in a bit. It gets briefly dicey.
Yeah.
But there's this game 1 thing we all needed to see that you fall back on. The defense to end the season was horrendous, as it was to start the season. And here's a question no one wants to relive. Do you remember asking each other every day, is it a switch? Can they flip it? This game, by halftime, the answer to that question was yes. So then I walked away from this one, and I remember feeling that way while I watched it. Man, even if they struggle at some point, like they can lock these guys down. They're going to win this series, and I feel better about the next one too.
The starters in that game, Murray plus 24, KCP plus 21, Porter plus 22, Jokic and AG plus 15 each. It was just a butt whipping, man. Like, this game didn't have a ton of intrigue other than that they completely and utterly dominated them.
I think the only remotely interesting part to it is that while it never really threatened the series, we did get a test of even if one of them's cat, this is still 2 bigs, which provides not necessarily for Denver, but for Jokic looking like the GOAT, it's going to provide some kind of barrier. And we saw that right away.
I thought the second best game in this series was game 2. Now, Jamal Murray dropped 40. Jokic had, and it's one of the plays I remember, there weren't really that many iconic plays, but do you remember Jokic's spin move, scoop shot around Rudy, and then he kind of gives the smirk face? He just kind of gives like a, I got myself with that one.
I've got a really similar take about this one too. I never actually doubt Jokic, like, ever, right? But the playoffs are starting, and there's this question of, man, how good is he going to be? I know he's going to be great, but how great? And then he hits that one, and he's laughing, and I'm laughing too. And I'm like, oh, he's going to be very great across this run.
The Nuggets were up 20 in game 2. Like, we remember the Wolves series as being very close, right? Like, it was a hard fight. Bruce Brown said maybe it was the biggest challenge. They win the first game, they're up 30 at a point, and in game 2, they're up 20 at the half. The third quarter was absolutely atrocious, and Minnesota actually took the lead.
Right.
So I think Denver wasn't up 20 at the half. I think they were only up 15, but they were up 20 in the second quarter. It starts to bleed, and then they blow it all in the third quarter to where they're trailing. Michael Porter had 13 in the fourth. He hit some big-time shots, and the Nuggets were super clutch. Like, the second half sucked all the way into the last 5 minutes when the Nuggets closed the game, making 8 of their last 10 shots. Murray hits a couple threes. Porter hits a 3. Or actually, I think it was Porter and Jokic that basically came up clutch in this one.
Yeah.
And they get the win. It was kind of a comfortable win at the end, and the game was kind of a butt win. They dominated most of it, but it ended up being close.
It bleeds into something we see in game 3 a little bit too, though, where, like, to that point, there's a bit of a question of, I mean, he was good in game 1, but in game 2, they had all these things working, but for 3 quarters, it was where's Mike a little bit, and then he steps up at the end. And that has this really, like, that's like this added layer they have where when he's involved, they're going to pull away from teams like this. And then, obviously, that bleeds into game 3 as well for Mike.
So game 3...
By the way, really quick, was the game 2's, that's when Anthony Edwards has 41, right?
Anthony Edwards was great from game 2 on. I mean, he kind of was dope after that. Game 1, not so much. Game 3, Michael Porter had 25. Nuggets led the whole game again. You don't remember this. because we remember the last two games where it got really close. But Nuggets, another kind of dominant win. And then in the clutch time, it got close in the clutch, and Nuggets starters go back in, and it was just a masterclass. Fourth quarter, last 7-8 minutes, they kind of score every single time. And even though it was close and they didn't get as many stops as they would have liked, you kind of, in hindsight, you watch that and go, oh, so they just did the Nuggets thing where they went to their best offense and nobody could even come close to stopping it?
But I do remember actually in that game that for 3 quarters, it didn't quite look unstoppable, or it wasn't the most pronounced. Here's what I remember. Quarter 3 came, and it felt a lot like they need something more from someone else.
Yeah.
And Mike was really good.
Mike was really
good in that game, in that quarter.
Game 4, Jokic has 43. Again, this is the game they lose, and they lose it in overtime. But again, Denver had a 10-point lead in the third quarter. We remember these games a little differently, and look, they lose this one, so they deserve the L. But Denver was once again up big. Nuggets offense in the second half just hit a wall. They couldn't make anything, and that's really why they lost this game. In the final 3 minutes, they were down 10, and they stormed all the way back. Michael Porter had some big buckets in that one. Jokic had a ton of big ones. Except for Jokic missed a free throw. And the only reason they didn't sweep that series is because Jokic missed one free throw with 13 seconds left.
Thank God we didn't have to dwell on that for more than 2 seconds. But yeah, that also, man, that run by Jokic and Mike, which wasn't even...
It was like the desperation run where like the game was over and then it wasn't.
But it also wasn't even like what Denver wants to do. It was just those two talented guys catching fire. And it erased their lead just like that. And that, to me, helped me realize how big the margin for error was, how much better they were than the
because this
Wolves.
was a bad game for the Nuggets.
And they almost won it. And it wasn't even their A+. It's just Mike got hot, and that was almost enough. So it helped me realize there was a real level difference between these squads.
So here's why we remember this series the way we remember it. Because Game 4, Denver loses, right? They lose the game. And in Game 5 in the first quarter, the Wolves were up big. They were up like 15 in the first quarter. So you kind of are watching that going like, oh, crap, did Denver lose momentum? Did they lose their mojo in the series? And they kind of had, but then they stormed back in the second quarter. They cut the lead. They take a lead. It was tied with a minute to go, so it was down to the very last minute. Jokic, who had actually struggled in the clutch of this game, comes up huge in the final minute. Back-to-back buckets on Rudy Gobert, basically, and he had an even better smirk than he had in Game 2. After the second one, which put him up like 5 with 20 seconds or maybe less, he just kind of has this look on his face of like, I always eliminate Rudy.
Dude, Rudy must hate him internally and quietly, and I wouldn't blame him. But yeah, it was another game where that game was the formula for the Wolves stealing a game, and they still didn't.
They still didn't.
And that's the thing about having the best player in the world, even on an off night, even in a night where you kind of look even with your competition or they've got something figured out that you're doing. The separator is always like, this guy is better than anyone on your team. And that only has to be true for 5 minutes at a time. And Jokic, much like LeBron, even in games where he's struggling, he's always going to find those 5 minutes. And that's
in this one, it was 1 minute. Honestly, he kind of was bad the last 5 minutes, and then he was great.
Then
he
cleaned
it
up when he needed to. I was in the building for that one. Obviously, a little anxiety towards the end.
Oh, because if they lose that and have to go back to Minneapolis, you're like, now it's weird, man.
Everyone knew they were going to win the series, but the conversation was, don't go back, because we wanted to see short series. They haven't done that yet, and so that was hey, we're at home. Let's not F around here. Let's close the door.
So if I rank this series, I go 1, 2, 3, 5, 4. I think the series got a little less interesting as it went on. It was a bit of a slog. All right, let's go into round 2, the Sun series. Game 1, absolute beatdown. Dude. I remember my tweet on the timeline was the Italian finger hand saying it's an absolute clowning or something like that. Like it's a clowning, because this was one we were nervous about. We'd been waiting for. How are they going to respond? And they respond by humiliating those poor fools. They were up. They outscored them in the second quarter 37-19.
All right, coming into that series, I felt very confident about Denver, but I was prepared to sweat it out.
Yep.
I was prepared for some annoying close games, some calls that go KD's way that we hate in the fourth, and just generally feeling anxious the whole time. And the hardest part about Game 1, covering it, was not going full Smuggets mode, not getting up here and being, because we all thought it, and I think we were right even, are they even in the same level? Are they even in the same tier? And obviously Phoenix would have a little pushback, but that was the question after game one. Kind of.
Yeah, they made some shots.
Yeah, they pushed back.
Yeah, they pushed back.
But they
made
never.
some shots.
But that in game one, it was, man, actually, here's what I remember narratively. Going into it, it's how can Jokic cover a team like that? How can Denver guard a team like that? And the question flipped so hard on its head.
Yeah.
You're walking away going, is there anything they can do to stop Jokic? And the answer, of course, would be no.
The answer was definitely no.
Definitely
In that game, just Murray and Jokic both. I mean, obviously the Murray moment, which was so big. We're ready for this, which is just an all-timer.
So many people have cited that as the moment it hit them. They were winning the title.
It really was.
Yeah.
That game, because we wanted to see like Minnesota, whatever. Let's see how they are against this team. And it was like, oh no, they are ready. Game 2 was a slog. 97-87. You remember this was a great defensive performance by the Nuggets, but nobody could score except for you. I mean, how often does this happen? Defensive slugfest. Nobody can score. Jokic, 39 points, 17 of 30 shooting.
I think
he's the one guy that somehow is never affected by it.
Which, by the way, in hindsight, is why Malone never coached offense and never gave a shit. He's like, actually, if you guys just play defense, he will win the game.
He'll win it, yeah.
And you know what? It's a good point.
So he has 39. Nobody else really has a good game for the Nuggets. This is really how you would put this. KCP goes 5 of 6, but Murray is 3 of 15. It's a pretty bad game for him. And meanwhile, Devin Booker starts his assault. Like game 1, he was good. He was making some shots.
Starts to get
game
hot
2,
here.
he has 35, and he 4 of 8 from 3, and he's starting to get hot here. It was a good game, but not that rewatchable because everyone was off.
But Malone loved it, and do you remember why?
A defensive slugfest.
But also he compared it directly to the Minnesota series where games 1 and 2 they won for very different reasons.
Right.
And I think he was very excited to see that materialize right away against Phoenix. Like, okay, in game 1 they couldn't touch you. In game 2, they're with you. How's this going to look? And it was, Coach, we're ready to win ugly, and I don't know if they are. And so that, I think, to me, I heard a decided leap in Malone's confidence, which was already pretty high. But that was his takeaway after game 2.
Game 3, the Nuggets lose. Jock Landale gets his number called and, ends up actually making an impact in that game, making a big difference in that game. The Nuggets lose this one, but Jokic still goes for 30, 17, and 17. Sneaky one of his all-time great games. He goes 11 of 19 from the field, but 30, 17. I mean, it is almost a bummer that he couldn't get the 30-20-20 because we had the 30-20-10 game, which had only been done by him and Kareem or whatever.
Right.
But if he would have had a 30-20-20 game, I'm pretty sure he would have been alone there. 17 assists. And then on the other side, the real story of this game was Devin Booker, 20 of 25 shooting. I mean, he just went absolutely off in this one, and Denver dropped it.
Yeah, but what was funny was that was the story, except Denver starters won their minutes, didn't they? And
yeah.
So I remember kind of realizing that, and it was going to be the same way in game 4. To that point, the deciding factor had actually been the benches.
Right.
And Denver,
including in the first round where the bench was good.
Yeah. And even in that game 1, which was a blowout, part of it was that Denver's second unit came in and extended instead of just treading, and the shit was done.
Yep.
And then I remember feeling when it went back to Phoenix, yes, Devin Booker got hot. It was very easy to overlook that Jokic was low-key outplaying him during those stretches, but they couldn't stop Jock Landale. And then, of course, in game 4, it was someone else.
In game 4, this one is where Devin Booker continues his assault, but this is the one where they basically said, let's guard Jokic straight up and see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's a Jokic career high. Now, Denver loses this game. He shoots 20 of 30, goes for 53 points. And again, the starters are all positive except for KCP. He was the lone negative, but the starters win their minutes. It just came down to that bench really couldn't hold it together. And Devin Booker goes 14 of 18, staying on fire. But this game was kind of fun.
And Shamit, too. Remember, he hit he was wide open, but he hit
5
them
of 8.
all,
Yeah, that was the Shamit game.
That's when they pull away.
This is why, after that game, when I just wasn't that nervous. You're nervous because anything can happen in a 3-game series, but I was like, Denver's kind of winning everything. They haven't really lost other than Booker's just absolutely on fire.
And this, to me, was when, for me, he was already there, but Jokic in this just divine tier of playoff performers. The conversation is like, well, you just got to make him a scorer. And you're like, bro, he just dropped 53 and you barely won because Landry Shamet had the game of his life. Because I don't even think people are wrong about make him a scorer. I remember thinking, yeah, you're probably going to lose that way too, man.
Just a different way to lose.
Yeah, and I know they won that game, but Jokic, we're like, well, we just got to make Jokic beat us. Well, the starters won their minutes, and he scored 53 points. So feel free to try that again, was how I felt.
Then we go to game 5, and if you want to say set the stage for it, you can say it is 2-2. Anything can happen at this point. Booker's on fire. What's going to be the story? Well, the story was, and I need people to remember this because I do think it gets lost to history. Game 1's a blowout. Game 2 is a comfortable win. Games 3 and 4 are close, but Denver loses. Game 5 was a butt whooping. Game 5, Bruce drops 25 points. Nuggets dominate the first and the fourth period in this game. 35-24 in the first quarter, 39-25 in the third quarter. They dominated the only parts of this game that really mattered, and it was over by the fourth.
Oh, dude, by halftime, we're thinking, hang on, I've seen this movie before.
No. You're thinking game 6.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me.
In the second quarter, they did kind of come back on Denver's bench a little bit.
Thank you.
But Denver was still up, I think, like 4 or 5. And then the third quarter happens, and they outscore them by 14. They're up 20 going into the fourth.
Thank you. I did jump ahead. And sticking with the logic that we had figured out, hey, someone off the second unit needs to step up at home, and Bruce obliged in that moment. And that was, for me... Now, it actually kind of fell off a cliff from here, this part of it. But for me, I'm remembering that the second unit was the Achilles heel of this team for 82 games. And at this point in the playoffs, it had looked like a strength. And Bruce Brown, these are the moments where you're going to be missing Bruce Brown. Yes, you can think of how guys might fill gaps with their skill sets. But Bruce scored 25 points in this game. Like, who's going to do that? And sometimes you need that, even when your starting 5 is the best there is.
Philly Urbanite has a good comment in the chat there where he says, at this point, Book was in the combo as best player in the playoffs. He had a great first round, and then in the second round, him going off in games 3 and 4 the way that he did. What did we lose there? And then him going off, he had a case for it. But this was the one where, in my heart, I'm saying, first of all, Yoke's been just the scorer that Booker has been, but also doing these other things. And I kept thinking, 15 of 20, 14 of 18. That's what Booker shot in those 2 games. And I was like, he's really good, man. I have a lot of respect for his ability to make tough shots. But even that for him is a little hot. What does he go in this game? 8 of 19, which is really good. That's really good. Guess what he was? Minus 19, because he had to be 15 of 20 for them to be in the game.
You know what they started doing a little bit in game 5 too? KCP starts picking him up full court every now and then.
Wear him down a little.
Some of the tricks they had deployed to tire Murray out, Denver said, all right, man, can you do that and do this and still have legs in the fourth? And the answer was no.
And then game 6, an absolute clowning, 44-26 in the first quarter. They jump on them. They dominate. They're up 20 points. Basically, the entire game, they're up 20 points. You never got nervous this entire time. And Phoenix went home sad.
And it was like everyone remembered the Dallas game. And
forget that. No. Everybody remembered game 4 of the Nuggets Sun series. Jokic gets ejected. He's frustrated.
I'm just saying it was the same thing.
It was.
It was the same thing in that, they didn't show up at all.
But to me, this was payback because remember then Booker gets up in Jokic's face when the Jokic is like, what are you going to do? Or whatever he's saying to him. But they're kind of doing the smirk, the like, get off, sweep, Suns in 4. It was a clowning of Denver. This one was the ultimate payback where it was, hey, yes, you guys won your 2 games because you got hot. But you came back here for game 5 and we smacked you right off the court. Then we went to your building where you're trying to even it up. And we humiliated you so bad that Murray and Jokic sat for most of the fourth quarter.
Yep. And it was, hey, remember what everyone was thinking after games 1 and 2? That you're not even in our class?
Yeah, back to that.
They were right.
They were right.
Yeah, they were right about that.
Oh, these are some fun games. Minnesota, I don't think, had any classics. The Phoenix series has tons of classics.
I agree with that.
I think I'm going to change my order here.
Okay.
I have it on my sheet one way, but I think I might. No, you know what? I'm going to keep it.
I think you're right.
Game 1 then was the best. We're ready for this. Just an iconic moment. Game 6 was the next one. Absolute clowning. Get these bums off our court. See you later. Game 5 is the next one. You do forget that Matt Ashbia came to Denver with Mel Tucker, which is kind of hilarious.
That's right. Yeah, that aged well.
That aged really poorly for them.
You guys remember Mel Tucker?
So that was next. Game 2 was probably 4th best. And then the last 2, the 2 losses, I'd say game 4 is a sneaky good game. Like Denver lost, but it's a career high for Yoke.
It was actually because I knew they were going to win the series, so I was able to take a step back and say all-time 2-game playoff duel. And everyone needed to acknowledge more that it was a two-person involvement. Yeah. Like Booker was going crazy. Jokic was playing some of the best basketball a center has ever played in those games, all playoffs long. And it was one of the best duels I've ever seen. And how often do you see a center and a shooting guard duel? But it happened.
But it was. And then game 3 was the last one, but also really good. So I think all 6 games of this, supremely rewatchable, super fun. But if I had to rank them, I think 1, 6, 5, 2 is the way I would put it.
I think you have it right, buddy.
All right, let's take a break. On the other side, the Lakers.
Oh, man. You'd think I'd be ready for this ad read, wouldn't you?
Well, you know how the rhythm of the show is.
Yeah. Kind Love is sick because they're one of the oldest dispensaries in Colorado, and now they're friends and partners with DNVR. They've been around since the original boom here in CO, 2010 actually. So they don't just do all the good stuff you've come to expect from all your dispensaries. They're changing the game, contributing to the culture. Authentic genetics, patient grow techniques, one of the highest quality brands in Colorado, and of course, their new game-changing product, Turbo Core, 100 milligram stick, looks like a toothpick. Guess what? It's full spectrum cannabis, actually. You stick it in the joint is even stronger. Turbo, baby. Turbo it up. These guys are awesome. Check out the Get It While It's Hot flower shelf. Right now they have 1/8 going out the door for $20, ounces for $100. That's insane. Visit one of our stores in Cherry Creek or North Denver, mention DNVR, and receive the DNVR exclusive 25% off all Kind Love flower pre-rolls and their Turbo Joint line. That's 25% off, gang. That adds up real quick. Visit that website at kindlove.com. Check out their exclusive or their extensive menu and make sure you use code DNVR.
We back?
Yeah. Now there's one more, You know how we do it. Oh, dude, Breckenridge Brewery. Man, Broncos country. It's time to drink again. I'm so sorry. But there's the Broncos country beer, which is the beer of the month. It's only $6 right now at the DNVR bar. New recipe. It's got a great taste. Breck Brew has a beer for every occasion. Football Sunday, Nuggets games, just time to go to the beach. They like to mess around. They like to. We talk about Jokic is innovative with the game. Breck Brew's innovative with their beers, but they never sacrifice that beer core, that beer quality we all want to enjoy when we crack a cold one open. Check out the Breck Brew locator at breckbrew.com to find a brew near you.
Alrighty, and we are back. Let's get into the funnest round yet. The Suns one was pretty fun, man. The Suns Lakers, I'm telling you, it's like neck and neck. I think you have to go Lakers just because of how much I hate them, but it was right there.
I think as a neutral observer, the Suns series is more fun, but the weight. Talk about defeating Nug life. Oh. You sweep the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals.
Stabbed it in the heart.
And it was you're sitting there going, man, don't pinch me if this is a dream. Don't even
let me enjoy the dream.
I'm good in the sleep world.
Guess what? It was real. Game number 1. We voted it the greatest game of Jokic's career. It's the Jokic masterpiece. He goes for, these are real numbers against Anthony Davis, 34 points, 21 rebounds, 14 assists. He hits that iconic shot in Anthony Davis's eye, the one that makes Anthony Davis look at him and go like this. Yeah. The Nuggets had a 134.7 offensive rating. Now, coming into this series, people were talking about Anthony Davis being the best defensive big of all time. Right. Just defensively, he could be everything.
What a run
This was a matchup between the best offensive center and the best defensive center. What's going to happen? It was a knockout. It was a knockout.
In fact, he knocked him out of the matchup. Don't you remember?
He really did.
Who was guarding Jokic at the end of the game?
A Jokic masterpiece. They did roll back. The only negative thing about this is that the Lakers did kind of roll back on Denver, but
it worked out in the long run.
But all it really did was inflate Jokic's numbers
and give Michael Malone some ammunition.
Oh, I gave him plenty of ammunition.
That was actually the best part. People go, oh, I don't know about this moral victory, and Malone just goes. Pfft.
Also, vote. I know it's easy to forget this because it was. I don't know if you remember a sweep. But people coming into that series had the Lakers.
Some of them in a sweep. So, yeah, it was. And, of course, we were all chastised for how confident we felt coming into the series, just deciding if it should be 5 games or 4, and with good reason. And a big part of it is that I think we all knew in our hearts AD was not going up against the same Jokic. Jokic was not going up against the same Lakers front court.
Right.
The whistle was going to be different.
Yeah.
And this shot is a great example because here's the thing, as much as we like to clown, Anthony Davis is one of the best defensive centers of all time. And look at that still shot, Adam. That's perfect defense. Did it matter?
No,
it did
nothing
not
but
matter.
net from like from Bones range, honestly, like super deep.
And this one, you're still thinking as a Lakers fan, well, it's lucky. But as a Denver fan, you're thinking, can't wait for the next one.
And guess what? They came.
They came.
And they kept coming in this series. That game to me is just about as happy as you can get. If you only rewatch one Nuggets game ever, it's probably that one. It's a Jokic masterpiece. It's the Lakers looking completely dejected, and it was the game. That shot to me was the moment. It was the moment that almost every self-aware Jokic skeptic completely melted and just said, you know what, I was wrong. It was with that shot coming on the heels of that performance where you watch LeBron, Anthony Davis, both in their bag, come up several tiers short of what Jokic was doing.
So I was actually out on vacation with my family for that first game. My little brother had never seen, like, 5-year-old kid, loves the Chiefs, hate him for that. I didn't race him, so I don't care.
Yeah.
But he'd never seen basketball in his life. That was the first ever basketball game he saw. Immediately when we got back to Denver, my mom had to go buy him a Jokic jersey because he was in love with basketball, and he can't stop talking about it because of that one game.
Imagine that being your first game, though.
I mean, it's pretty.
It's like, I don't know if it's going to be like that every time.
So you know, there's some ups and downs in this business. But no, it's also everyone caught that one, right? Yes, it's Jokic's best game. We have seen Jokic masterpieces.
Yeah.
Many people didn't.
Yeah.
Then comes the TNT game. Jokic is maybe grumpy about a horse race. And it's like, oh, I don't know about this guy. But no one missed game one.
Yep.
It was the Lakers, and over half the people tuned in to watch LeBron do that to them.
Yep.
And it went very hard in the other direction. And so if you're still a Jokic skeptic, you simply missed that game or you're lying.
No, it's not. It's like a lack of self-awareness, which is like, put those people in a separate box, man.
But that's my point being, like, this game was if there was any you're not sure, it's gone. It's stamped out.
Game 2 was a great game as well, a bit closer. That was the fourth quarter barrage game. This is the one where Murray, Porter, everybody kind of unleashes and hits all of these big shots.
Oh, man.
Murray does this one. And here's another thing I love about that game. Because Anthony Davis had 40. Jokic had 34, 21, and 14.
Right.
A better game. Everybody's, Jokic outplayed Anthony Davis, made him force the switch the lineup and everything else. But AD still had a good game. But remember, to that point, AD's defense was always there, but his offense would come and go. Game 2, Anthony Davis, 4 of 15.
Yeah, the offense went. And listen, part of it, too, I will actually give him credit for this. And because I think it's ultimately just a Jokic compliment. He had to play his ass off on defense.
Yeah.
He had to be a defensive specialist. And even when you're the very best players in the world, Kawhi is my perfect example of this. You can be a defensive specialist. The more they ask you to score 40, you can't do both. You cannot do both. That's why a lot of the best players become so offensively lopsided. And even a guy like Kawhi, who slowly stopped guarding the best player, AD had to do both in that series, and it's why they never had a chance.
Game 3, the Murray game, 37 for him. Most of those were in the first half, by the way, but he was on fire. Hit the first shot of the game. I think he started like 7 of 7 or something like that in that game. He was on fire. The one funny thing about this game, remember D'Angelo Russell after game 1, Malone is like, it's going to be interesting if they keep playing him. And they played him in game 2. Same result. Nuggets murdered every minute he was on the court. Was a disaster for the Lakers. Game 3, you're thinking, are they going to make a switch? They don't.
They don't.
And Murray roasts him. Like, Murray is just going crazy on D'Angelo Russell. And you're thinking, oh my God.
They're still trying to, because there's that thing they picked up in the film session, but they just can't. He's still going right.
Yeah. And then the 2-man game in the final 4 minutes was just unstoppable. This was a good game. Murray being red hot. He went ice cold in the second half, but Murray being red hot early on kept Denver in the game. And then it gets to clutch time, and you're sitting here thinking, like, going into this game, I thought, all right, Denver's probably going to lose game 3. That's just how it goes, the rhythm of this one. Denver gets to the final 5 minutes of this game, and you're thinking, like, they have a chance to do this. And not only do they close out the game, they dominate the clutch. Right. The Murray-Jokic 2-man game is chef's kiss, beautiful. And this game's actually not that close. It was a close game all game. But in the clutch, Denver just separated, put it to bed. And for me, it was... Oh, by the way, Jokic was in foul trouble. It's part of why this game was a little close.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to bring that one up,
Go
too.
for it.
This was a huge watershed moment because it's game 3. It's 2-0. If you win this, it's done. But you're back in LA. We remember the AD shot. Long-standing citizens of Nug life remember much more than I do. And it is all at the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
You have to get this game. Game 3 happens. Jokic picks up a 4th foul. He leaves the game. Denver's up 6. The Lakers need to make their run here, and they do. But Bruce Brown, I believe AG, although I don't know if it shows up statistically, KCP gets hot at the end of the 3rd.
Yeah,
And the non-Jokic minutes all year, bro, all year, not just the bench, but the non-Jokic minutes.
That's exactly it.
They can't. They're drowning.
It's a great note.
And they do lose those minutes, but they keep their heads above water, and it's enough for Jokic to come back in and shut the door.
It was the emotional climax of the playoffs. The Nuggets win that one, and the way they win it with the Jokic-Murray two-man game just separating the game. You have the LeBron AD clutch, like you think at home, going to be battle for even Murray Jokic in the starting lineup. It's going to be tough to close this one out. It didn't. It looked like every other series. It looked like the Phoenix series. It looked like the Wolves series. It looked like Tuesday against any team. Denver's two-man game just took over, and they separated, and it was the emotional climax, in my opinion, of the entire run. Game 3, you sat there and go, they got it.
And by the way, they're looking there with their hands in their air, like, what do we do? In a way that reminded me of how teams used to feel when playing the Warriors. Ironically, right after the Lakers had just cleaned the Warriors out. And maybe this is game 4, Adam, but they run like 2 inverted pick and rolls, and then they run the inverted DHO, and Jokic just sprints into it.
No, I think you're actually be confusing the Miami game. This might have been in Miami.
Okay,
Either way. No, I think you're right. No, you are right.
It's a barrage of inverted two-man action.
Walking right to the rim.
And they're like, well, we don't want Jokic, so we'll do this. And then they're like, okay, now Murray does the handoff.
This is the game. This is the exact game. This is what I'm talking about. In the clutch, they just separated because the Lakers' offense wasn't quite as good as they expected it to be in the clutch, and Denver did not miss. And they didn't just not miss; they got the easiest looks they needed. Murray has the layup where he spins through and lays it up like this, as if he's like, "We're getting layups on you guys in the clutch."
Jokic sprints into the DHO. The Lakers are like, "What the fuck is happening?" Someone slides over. He spins.
Oh yeah.
Mike relocates and Jokic hits him. You're like, you cannot guard that.
Chess versus checkers, man. They were spinning in circles. Oh, that game is so great.
Dude, this is sick. We should do this every show.
Game 4 was a great one because this was the LeBron game where it's like, I'm not going to get swept. I'm not getting swept. And he got swept. The Nuggets, remember, they took the shot from the Lakers and from LeBron, really. Like, LeBron was like, I'm going to do it all on my own. I'm going to guard Jokic and I'm going to make all my threes.
Yeah.
Perfect first half. Denver's down 15. Guess what happened in the third quarter? Arguably the best quarter Denver played in the entire playoffs.
Man.
They outscore him 36 to 16 in the third quarter. And the highlight of the game was, even though it wasn't the end of the game, well, it wasn't the highlight. Jokic has 2 shots, one in LeBron's eye and one in Anthony Davis's eye.
That's right.
Those are the highlights. But the other highlight, the sneaky highlight, was KCP's and one on Anthony Davis to give Denver the lead for the first time in the third quarter. And he flexes on the ground. Jokic kind of gives his, like that was the moment where the Nuggets just took LeBron's best shot, the Lakers' best shot, stormed back in 2 minutes, like, of great offense. They stormed all the way back, and they just, like, they were in a way. Jokic is never emotional like that.
Yeah,
he lets one out because he was like, "We're sweeping you. Like, this is over."
Reminds me of a point we missed in the Suns game. There's the close of that series, and you want to talk about were they really worried? There's that shot of Jokic and Jamal.
Sitting there, bored.
They're like yawning.
They're bored.
But the Lakers one, you could tell. If they say it wasn't personal, I think they're probably lying. That's fine. They looked like they wanted that one. Also, the symbolism of how it ends. Because for so long, it's teams like Denver, fun and cute. What are they going to do to stop LeBron? And that's a fair question, by the way. But it's Aaron Gordon and Jamal get that stop. And you're like, there's just this symbolism and like, oh, it's different now,
It's
man.
different,
It's just
dude.
different.
We're the bullies.
Yeah.
This one, that series was like a boxing match where round 1 was just completely put him on the mat twice. You know, you're just like, oh my God. Then game 2, same thing, dominate it. Then game 3, you put him on the mat again, or round 3. And then round 4 is where the boxer comes out knowing that they're not going to go the distance. So they're like, I just got to get a knockout punch. Let me throw. And they dominate for like half the round, just throwing all these punches. And you're like, how much of these are landing or whatever? And then the Denver just comes out of that and is like, nah, those didn't hurt. Boom! Knockout punch in the third quarter.
And that's why I love granting all the Lakers fans. Fine, you want to tell me it was the most competitive?
It wasn't!
No, but also fine. Tell me. I don't know. We played really good basketball. You sure did.
It was the best sweep.
You guys really almost won a game.
It wasn't, man. I'm telling you, go back and rewatch these and you're just like, oh yeah, Denver was not losing an inch. They weren't giving up an inch to that Lakers team. They swept them. the games weren't quite as close as people want to remember them, to be honest with you. Like, a lot of these games, the last 2 minutes weren't that close.
No.
But in this one, oh my God,
They
it was
looked
beautiful.
close, and then what did we learn? One team was much better than
All right, let's take a break on the other side, the finals. We're going to race through that, and then I'm going to give you my official order.
Hey, DraftKings pick of the week. Colorado, Oregon looks like a fun game. It's going to be tough to pick Colorado money line, especially with Travis Hunter out. But there's a really big spread. It's 21 points.
Wow, that's a spread.
So I would suggest looking at that spread. I'm not going to tell you which way to go, Adam. I'm not going to tell you which way to go, but depending on how confident you feel about this game one way or another, it's -10 in either direction to take either team to cover the 21-point spread. That's where I'm looking. We're going to learn a lot about CU this weekend. We're going to learn a lot. That's your DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. And here's just your conventional ad for Shady Rays, who we love so very much. We tell you about them all the time because it gets real sunny in Colorado. Not a lot of people know that. Not a tundra. Lots of sun happening here. Take on the sun with gear built to last like Shady Rays. You don't have to spend a ton to look like you're worth $1 million, to feel like you're worth $1 million. That's why I get my shades at Shady Rays, where I shop with no risk. If I don't even like them and I can exchange for a new pair, return them for free. And we're not just telling you this for fun. We've got a code. Go to shadyrays.com. Use code DNVR. 50% off. Half off, folks. 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. We gave you that DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. Let's just talk about DraftKings because it's a great time to have a lot of fun on DraftKings. I started to lose my interest in the NFL at some point in my sports fandom. I was working my way back to it, and you don't have to do this, but betting really helped me. Just throw in $5 every here and there on like an underdog. You sit down, this game, all of a sudden you've got skin in the game. It's so much fun. They're keeping you up to date on the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5, get $200 instantly. If you're an existing customer, they're always throwing sweet bonuses and bets your way. Football's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the app now with code DNVR. Use DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, with code DNVR. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
All righty, final segment here, and let's going to talk about the finals now against the Miami Heat. Game 1, Nuggets just controlled the whole game. I'll say this about this series. There's a highlight. There's a couple games in here that are super highlights, but I think this one is probably more like the Wolves series than it is like the Suns and Lakers, and that there's a couple iconic performances for sure, but for the most part, it was a grind. Like, Miami know how to make this really slow. The numbers didn't really pop out on most of the games.
Yeah.
And Denver won in a way that was tense, but not necessarily like highlight worthy.
No, and also expected.
Yeah, and expected.
I think
you're right.
I think even some Miami fans. Well, we'll get to it. There's one flicker of hope for Miami, and it's extinguished.
Nuggets control game 1. I don't have much takes outside of that.
Aaron Gordon coming out of a bunch of matchups which were really physical, and he had to play up all the time. Miami didn't have anyone to guard him. I think that's the one in the first quarter where he's
you're
just
right.
dunking
That is.
all
you're
over
right.
Caleb Martin.
You're right. He's so big in that
and
game.
you're like, oh, this is a matchup problem.
Game 2 is the worst game. I mean, not to spoil it, I think maybe the worst game of the entire playoff run. Denver just didn't show up. Murray, I thought, got a little too excited.
Yes.
I think Denver probably saw the finish line and was like, oh, this is going to be easy. And Miami capitalized on it. But this was a very poorly played game by Denver. I think the only poorly played game of the entire playoffs.
It was also the case for Miami stealing some games. So well coached, so disciplined. So if you play your best basketball, you're beating them. If you show up half asleep, they're going to beat you. And that was the case in game 2.
It's also the only game I attended all playoffs.
You didn't
I was 0 for 1.
Really?
Yeah. Game 3 is, to me, an all-timer. This is the double 30-point triple doubles.
Oh, yeah.
And this, to me, was one of my favorite games because we needed to see. Murray had a terrible game, too. I was a little worried that he was too He wanted it for himself a little too much. Like, was he going to make the right reads, this or that? Game 3 was an absolute masterpiece because he had to both score and be aggressive, but also make the right play. One of his best games he's ever played in terms of all around. Him and Jokic, just absolute masterpiece.
Maybe the definitive duo game, right? And the only duo to post triple doubles in the same game in the finals. It was a response to an ugly game 2, and it was. I mean, I think we all know Jokic is one of the very best players of all time. When Murray is at his best, he belongs with him step for step in that partnership. And this was Murray at his best. I put this note in here. It's a little tense still because Miami won game 2. And then Denver, in the first quarter, it's a little ugly. And Miami fans are starting to get into it. And I don't know if you remember, Miami puts together maybe the best defensive possession anyone does in the playoffs. The ball is swung to Murray. Someone's in his sidestep 3, sidestep 3, drains it.
Yep.
The crowd just done.
And it's in front of the Nuggets bench, and he looks down at the Nuggets bench and kind of says something to him, and it was just one of those ones like, yeah.
And there's a Murray thing you can't explain even if you do this for a living. I'm going to try to. Yes, those game 2s will happen where he presses, but it's not just enough to have a dynamic player next to Jokic. It's not just enough to have a guy who can hit an open 3. In the finals, in the playoffs, you need a guy who can hit that 3.
Yep.
And that's who Murray is every time.
Game 3 of the finals was Kobe and Shaq. That to me, like if I envision what's next for Murray, it's game 3. It's can you just be that guy now all the time? And honestly, I think he can because he was that guy again in game 4. Aaron Gordon had 27 points on this game. He shot 11 of 15. Nuggets starters absolutely crushed. Kind of a ho-hum win, to be honest with you. Denver just won and never really got threatened in it.
It just balance is restored.
Yeah.
Jokic and Murray did what best players do in game 3, and then the team, I think, felt the ground steady beneath them, the ship.
And then game 5 was just an ugly game, but it was so meaningful. So like there wasn't a whole lot of like beauty or sexy to this game, but it was the one that clinched it. 94-89. It really reminds me a lot of game 7 in the bubble against Utah, where it was you knew it was going to be tough. It was tough. It was ugly. It was a grind, but Denver was the better team.
They were ready. This could have been game 2. The difference was Denver's approach as it got. As there was they could have gotten mired down in the viscosity of it, just like a sticky, kind of slow, but they pushed through. And actually what they had shown Malone earlier in the playoff run, they can win those games. So shout out to Denver.
All right, I'm going to rank these top 20 now going backwards. And I'm going to race through the bottom 10 just because whatever. But I think Heat game 2, the finals game 2 is the worst game. Don't rewatch it. Denver played terrible. It was a slog. It wasn't a good game. Wolves game 4, Denver loses this in overtime. Again, Denver's offense was starting to get a little clunky towards the end of this series, and that was one of them. Anthony Edwards is going off. Suns game 3 and then Suns game 4 come in 18 and 17. I actually think both games are pretty rewatchable. As far as
strong agree,
Denver lost 4 games. Wolves game 4, Heat game 2. I don't recommend going back and watch. Suns game 3 and 4, kind of a good watch.
I'm telling you, man, people are going to be like, when Booker's story is all said and done, people are going to be like, you got to go back and watch these 2 games in which he was arguably outplayed by Jokic.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Number 16, Wolves game 5. It was a slog, but Denver wins. There were some moments in there. Number 15, Wolves game 3. Again, this Wolves series, I'm not kidding. A lot of them came at the end of this.
Yeah.
And then number 14, Heat game 4. I said it was a ho-hum win. It was the finals and put Denver up 3-1. You kind of knew, so it was important, but a slog. Game 13, number 13, Wolves game 2.
Yep.
This game would have been way higher if it wasn't for that third quarter meltdown where Denver gets outscored by 21 points or whatever like that. It ruins the game, but they actually had moments that were really, really good. Number 12, Suns game 2. So here's what we get. The top 12 here, Suns game 2, Suns Nuggets game 2, A+ game. Totally fun rewatch if you go to rewatch it. And it's 12.
Man, that is crazy.
Big time performances. Number 11 is Heat game 5 because the Nuggets win the title. I mean, really, that's why.
Sick.
And now we're in the top 10. Wolves game number 1.
I'm interested at this placement. Make your argument for why that should be.
Because all these other games are unbelievable, man. Honestly.
No, I meant higher than, say.
Oh, because Denver looked unbelievable. Like that, part of this is like if you want to have fun, go back and watch this one where the ball's popping, the defense is unbelievable. There's lots of fast breaks. It's a great game. It's Denver plays great.
So 10 is Wolves game 1. Okay.
Number 9 is Heat game 1. Same thing. Denver, it's in the finals. The pressure's up, and Denver just looks really good. There's big time performances. Number 8 is Lakers game 4. This one is just the comeback. The third quarter is unbelievable.
Switch game 9 there, yeah, to Heat game 1, buddy. Just
Oh, yeah. Number 9 is Heat game 1. That's finals game 1.
Okay, sorry. Yes, Lakers game
That's
4.
Heat. There we go.
He's got it.
Yeah, there you go.
I would never type live on the internet, so God
Number
bless
8
you.
is Lakers game. Number 4 is Lakers game 4. Just the comeback. Jokic has 2 freaking unbelievable. One on LeBron, one on AD. It's the one where LeBron says you just have to tip your hat. Yes, because Jokic was that good, and even your own masterpiece gets completely erased by Jokic. It's unbelievable.
The AD and LeBron talking like they got back from World War II. Just like, we did everything we could.
That's so
Never
true.
seen anything like that.
There's literally nothing
LeBron
anybody
puts
could
his
ever
arm
do.
around AD, like,
Number 7 is Suns game 5. Just the clowning. I mean,
Yeah.
they just start. That's where they start to clown on them. How could you not enjoy that one? You're also nervous for it. Number 6, Lakers game 2. Another one. Another just like clowning. I mean, these are where we get into the clownings. Number 5, Suns game 1.
yeah.
The second biggest clowning in that entire series.
So I would say because of the Nug Life thing, the Lakers series was heavier.
Yeah.
But I actually think it was a little more tense going in.
It was vibier in the Sun series, man.
And
it was
we
vibier.
weren't sure what the Suns yet were, man. And it was just and it was off all the shit they talked, and if only Jamal was healthy,
Yeah.
and you're like, guess what it looks like when
Yeah,
he
guess
is.
what it looks like.
Guess
You guys
what
are
it looks
outclassed.
like what it is.
That's why number 4 is Suns game 6. This one was get off of our court. Peyton Watson plays 4 minutes in this game because they're up by so much.
Oh,
That bringing in the guys on the 2-ways, it's like, hey, Jack White, we need you out there, man, because we're trying to rest our guys. Get ready for the next round. Number 3, Heat game 3. I mean, this the double 30-point. I can't, for almost any other run,
You're
this
right.
game is number 1.
Yeah,
it's
you're
number
right.
3.
How is it? Yeah, you're right.
2 30-point triple doubles, an absolute response from Jamal Murray, one of my favorite Jamal Murray games of all time. Also, Jokic was pretty good, I guess, 30-20-10 for the second time this playoffs.
Yeah, whatever. That's what he does.
Number 2, I have Lakers game 3 on here. Again, the emotional climax, I think, of the entire playoffs.
This is so maybe blasphemous to say. This is the Nuggets won the title game for me.
It is. I mean, it really was the moment. And them winning
Nug
a
life
game.
is dead.
You kind of just chalked it. It was house money. The Lakers thought they were going to win.
Yeah.
And the Nuggets go in there and win. And not just win, but make the statement, man. And you're just like, oh my God,
You're
this
like,
team
they
is
get
good.
this game too?
They get this one too? I didn't even ask for this one.
That's exactly. You're like, I could drop this one. It's the one they dropped. No, and we were in the bar and you look around and everyone knows what the symbolism in this matchup is. And people are looking at each other like, yo, we're going to do it.
And Jokic
They're
and
gonna
Murray.
do it.
And Jokic and Murray going against LeBron and AD. And LeBron and AD might as well have been Cat and Ant. They just was like, yeah, they're on a different tier, man. They're not on the level. And then number 1 is one of my favorite games of all time, Lakers game 1. I mean, look at this thing.
The best game from maybe the third best player of all time.
So let me know what you guys think, man. We're going to put this out on social, and I'm so curious to see what games people kind of hold more fondly. Honestly, the cool thing about this is it's like when we did the top 25 athletes and people would get mad and be like, how'd you have him?
Just tell us yours.
It's like, guys, you could be mad or you could admit that all of these games were awesome and your order of them is more about how awesome it was rather than getting upset. But this is my order. If you asked me to do this again in a week, I probably would have a slightly different order somewhere.
Sure.
Because we're splitting hairs about the happiest days of my life.
It should be done all year round.
We just keep redoing it.
That's every podcast.
Once a month, you have to go back.
Right.
It's 12 rankings, and the last one's the one that
I
counts.
can't believe there's 10 games on here that were all like awesome freaking games.
I know. I'll just love that. You know how hard it was to even.
But bring that back up here because you messed up on number 10 is Wolves game 1, not game 4. They lost game 4. Got to make sure we get this right here. Yeah, Heat game. Everything else looks good. That's Wolves game 1. All right, everybody. That does it for today. Our Rocky Show is up next. Hope you enjoyed looking down memory lane.
Dude.
We are going to redo a rewatch now of some of the games here. Stay tuned to Twitter. We'll put it in the Discord as well about what games will be coming up. But I think it'll be fun to spend a segment looking back and things we might have forgotten as we rewatch the full game.
And I'll just leave you in the audience with this. If you're having a rough day, Google who the most recent NBA champions are. It's the Denver Nuggets.
Hit that like button on the way out.